Yuki is a three-time founder and a startup enthusiast. He has advised dozens of startups, VC funds, and angel investors on legal strategy and finance, drawing on his own past as a consultant and corporate lawyer in five different countries. He is currently the managing director of Techstars Tokyo Accelerator, a startup accelerator program that supports Japanese and international startups. They welcomed their inaugural batch in 2024 with 12 startups. It was such an honor speaking to Yuki and to hear his experience and wisdom he gained through being a founder of many ventures, as well as pioneering Techstars in Japan. I think I can say on behalf of all of us, speaking to Yuki makes you feel like you can really bring about the changes that you want to see in the world. Again, thank you so much for being here on the Cool People podcast and enjoy the episode. So, first of all, how has being an MD at Techstars been? Like, is it as you expected, or were there any surprises?
Yeah, good question. I think the answer is yes and no. So yes, to certain things that I was expecting to get myself into.
Yeah.
I was expected to, guide, mentor, and then hopefully help a lot the 12 startups that I selected for the first class, which
Mhm.
I have hopefully done well enough to be appreciated by the founders. Let's see how founders will do in 3 years and 5 years time. So
Mm.
that's, the most important thing. Founders first. I recruited 88 mentors personally, and then also found sponsors and founders who did founder story. And I run 70 workshops. So the program was full of stuff and then full of things where founders can learn and and grow. So I really enjoyed being the MD, and it was my pure joy to see them grow really as people, as a
Mm.
person, and then also as a founder, as an entrepreneur. They have learned a lot, and they are improving every day. So that was really good. So no part has obviously good side and bad side. The good side is it was a lot more rewarding than I anticipated. The bonding among the founders and also the mentors, they became part of the family, helping founders, and they had the give first mentality. They really didn't get anything in return. They just wanted to, share their expertise and knowledge and experience with the founders and then
Mm.
me. So that was extremely rewarding and unexpected. I got overwhelming amount of help from everyone that I talked
Mm.
to. So that was really good. And no part, obviously, there are a lot of operational hiccups and like all the kind of stuff during the program. So
Mm.
I'm not going to get into those details, but wow, this is tough moment.
Mm.
It's like a founder's journey, but yeah, I had my moments here and there
Mm.
throughout the program. So yeah, but overall, it is an amazing experience, and I'm really glad that I've been doing this.
Mm, definitely. For full disclosure, as everyone knows, this was like the first batch ever in Tokyo. So
Hmm.
I think
Yeah.
operational hiccups are bound to happen, first of all,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
It was such a great turnout to the event. There were so many people there. Everyone seemed to like know each other as well, which is a good feeling at like one of
Yeah.
those events.
Yeah.
It felt like cheering on our friends who are kind of making the first moves in this like
Hmm.
growing industry. Um,
Yeah.
but I wanted to dig a bit more here where
Hmm.
like, we'll get into your very eclectic career background later, but
Right.
what was kind of like your own personal mission or purpose for being part of this?
Right. So I've been always passionate about startups, and my excitement and passion of fulfillment personally comes from the fact that I am helping the founders. The
Mm.
founders have their missions, and they want to make the world a better place,
Mm.
so to speak. They have, the problems they want to solve. They have people they want to help. They have something that bothers them, and they want to, remove that roadblock. So I always I wanted to help those people
Mm,
achieve their goals and ambitions. So I'm also a founder of three startups, but I'm always generally a co-founder. So I have co-founders who have dreams and goals and visions, and
mm,
which obviously resonate with me, and then I start together with those people.
mm,
But I feel I'm not, for example, a visionary of the
mm,
century or decade or whatever. But I know when I see a visionary or people who would like to be a visionary or who has a vision, who has a goal, who has, ambition, and then I always wanted to be of those people's help as an advisor or the mentor or whatever the guide. So I think that's where everything this comes together for
mm,
this role, and then also what I've been doing. I think that's like a main theme that kind of like run through my career,
mm.
eclectic career.
Definitely. So you would position yourself more as like a person who can recognize those visionaries and also
Hmm.
someone who is very willing to support and
Hmm.
back them when they need it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's how I position myself. And then I think
Mm,
I'm much better at doing those things than actually like leading people as a visionary. And then of course, to some extent, I have to be a leader, and then I'm a leader in some respects. But those visionaries that you can think of, wherever it is in any field, those people are very different, right? Like
mm,
and I'm okay. I'm not being one of them, and I'm more than happy and excited to help those people achieve their dreams and goals.
mm. Do you mind if I ask what are certain traits that you notice among visionaries that you've worked with or partnered with or invested in the past?
Right. So they have persistence. So
Mm,
they are very persistent on certain things. Most likely a problem they want to solve
mm,
that bothers them, or they think they can do better. Different perspectives towards the problem.
mm,
But they thinking about those kind of things all the time
mm,
from different angles and whatnot throughout their lives. So I think that kind of thing makes those visionaries kind of stand out from normal people because
mm,
people just get bothered by something or like see a problem but just forget
mm.
about it or just think somebody will else will solve it. So it's
Yeah.
they don't own it. So the problem exists everywhere, and then
Mm,
problem is a non-discriminatory, as in like a lot of problems just affect everyone.
mm,
But people are just like, it is what it is, or like somebody else, please, solve this, or
mm.
I don't care, I have party to go to or whatnot,
That's
right? But those people are very peculiar and persistent about those
mm,
kind of things. But also at the same time, if you become a founder or live in a real world, there are a lot of things beyond your control. So you have to be flexible
mm,
in another way. You got to adjust yourself. You, of course, have to work with people who don't have the same motivation or incentive or willingness to,
mm,
solve a problem or to do anything with you.
mm,
But you have to involve those people, and you have to make these people also interested and excited, or like, help you in some way.
mm,
So those people have like very flexible slash the way to kind of convince the world or people around you to,
mm.
to come around to
Yeah.
help you. So I think that's also I think important trait that I see, and then I like to see an successful founder.
Mm, mm. So it's like persistence, like malleability or like flexibility, and also
Yeah,
like the ability to like empower or like convince
it's
people
yeah,
around.
exactly. Yeah, yeah, you
Um,
summarize it really well. Yeah, pretty much the all three.
And when I know that you've seen a lot of startups and a lot of companies. When it comes to co-founders, is that kind of
Mhm.
a dynamic that you see works pretty well, where one person is kind of like this, like a very eclectic, like
Hmm.
visionary type, and the other one is a bit more subdued, but more like a sustaining figure. Is that kind of the dynamic you look for, or not necessarily?
Yeah, I think so. For me, when I co-found a company, obviously the personal chemistry with the other co-founders is most important because you
Mm,
will work with those people 24/7. So
hmm.
just because the founder is visionary doesn't mean that, people want to work with those people.
That's
So
true.
for me, I think personally, I think that's really important whether I like click personally
Mm,
with the co-founders, and of course I have to uh, like be aligned with the visions and goals and ambitions because my goal is never financial, for example. But
mm,
some founders' goal is just to make a lot of money,
mm,
right? And that's okay as long as and they contribute to the world's like whatever, solving problems or making the world a better place. I think it's totally legitimate making money, but selling or whatnot. But um, for me, it's more for non-financial aspects. So that's, I think, important. And then speaking of, I think, successful founding team, slight digression, but I think the balance, as you said, is really important. Of course, there are a lot of companies where solo founders, led and succeeded.
mm,
But generally speaking, I think the team is better, and then and dynamics and a balance within the founding team is really essential.
mm,
Right, like one visionary, like long-term thinker, a moonshot thinker, versus like a really realistic operational, like executive type of
mm,
person, or of course technical person, vice business. So like a lot of traits or skills and experiences that
mm,
you know. I think it's like a broadly speaking a diversity, but I think the different perspectives and different skill sets within the founding team definitely makes the team and the company much stronger.
Interesting, interesting. I feel like I saw examples of that in the
Mhm.
people that demoed that day at the
Mhm.
Techstars Accelerator. Yeah. And I'm also thinking just generally like Apple, like Steve Jobs and Wozniak, like that was
Yeah,
a combo as well. So interesting, interesting. We'll probably get
yeah,
into a bit more of this
yeah,
in
sure.
your experience with investing as well. But
Hmm.
for my next question. So I was like struggling a little bit when I was planning out this podcast because you have such a wide-ranging and eclectic background. And within the decade or so coming out of college, you were a trade negotiator, a policy analyst, a PhD student, a management consultant, and then an entrepreneur. And then for the following decade, you actually practiced corporate law in New York. Um,
Yeah.
so I want to go through all of that, of course, but I'm particularly interested to hear more about that specific transition you made to becoming a lawyer. Like that's not
Mm.
an overnight or an easy thing. So what
Mm.
was kind of the reason that you made that pivot?
Right. So a lot of things were happening at the time. And retrospectively,
Mm-hmm.
like I can't, I hope I can, I mean, I wish I can say like a really cool things about my transition,
Mm-hmm.
but I think honestly speaking, I think my sort of startup I wanted to do on the side didn't go well. And so I was a management consultant, and it was fine. I was doing well, and then client appreciated it. And then I became sort of like a self-employed management consultant, following the same clients that I had at management consultancy, I'm Bain. And yeah, so I was helping them. And then on the side, I wanted to start up this business with two engineers. I still think the idea was great, but execution and then, timeline, and it just didn't work out. And then
Mm-hmm.
at the time, and I think financial crisis was looming, 2007, 8. And many young viewers probably don't know that happened because they're a child. But as an adult, that was a big moment, and lots of uncertainties
Mm-hmm.
and worries about future, and whether I'm going to just do anything really with my failed startup, and then a few years of here and there experience. Like you mentioned, I was a trade negotiator and policy analyst, and then I started a PhD program, and I didn't like it, and I dropped out, and I started this. So I was literally all over, and then obviously I was a mid-20s and still young and reckless, but beginning to think like, oh, I have to just start thinking about my career, or like literally living more seriously. And then yeah, I became a lot more practical, and then started a JD MBA program.
Wow.
Because once you get the legal qualification, that is license, right? You can practice law really in the jurisdiction you're admitted to, and with an MBA and whatnot, that opens the world. Like for me, so okay, I just need to calm down and then be realistic, and this has to like I have to have some kind of basic qualifications skills that would make me like a marketable or sellable and
Mhm.
in the worst case scenario. So I think um, I would like to say a lot of other cool things that I made a transition to becoming a lawyer then, but I think that was what I was going through, to be
Mhm.
honest. And then, yeah, I'm glad I did. So throughout law school and my, lawyer life at big law firms, I kind of established my practice in M&A funds, and then helping a lot of venture capitals and of course private equities, but also startups. And then I've been an angel investor, since law school days. So, my connections in Toronto, where I studied mostly, and then also New York where I worked, were still pretty strong, and super early days, especially to a Japanese startup people.
Mm.
So I really don't have any regrets, and I'm so glad that I made that decision. But
Mm.
the at the time, what prompted me was fear, I think. Like I need to have some kind of skills or experience or license to
Mhm.
survive if everything just falls apart and nothing works out.
Mm, mm.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true. It's interesting though that like I've heard that the financial crisis actually triggered a lot of people to becoming very risk averse, but instead you
Yeah.
kind of moved on to angel investing in law school.
Yeah, that is very true. That is true. So that part, yeah, didn't, yeah, click in me. So I went to law school, but still kept angel investing, which is
Interesting.
bad investment decision, probably.
Oh no.
I
But I
should
mean
have
it was
invested in
I guess it was like
ETFs and in debts and
yeah.
stuff.
No, but I guess it's like also in the downtimes where, you can
Mm,
see the things that the lean muscle that is stripped
mm,
away after the
yeah,
fat is stripped away, right? So,
right.
um the you did a lot of like corporate law, like you mentioned like M&As and stuff, and also kind of work with
Mhm.
Japanese companies. Was that like a deliberate choice or was that kind of naturally, where you kind of gradually went into? Or was it like I want to deal with businesses, specifically startups and like that?
Yeah, I wanted to be a corporate lawyer. And then my
Mm,
passion has been and had been in good startups or venture capitals and whatnot. So
mm,
I always wanted to be a corporate lawyer and M&A funds specifically. So yeah, I think it was a deliberate choice after I became a lawyer.
interesting. And
Mm.
I only kind of remember the 2008 financial crisis, but I imagine that the word startup and venture capital were very different meaning words and with very different connotations back then. Can you like share with us a little bit what it meant during that time for you to step away from consulting and try a startup? Like, was that a normal thing to do, or was it like very like, what are you doing?
Right. So yeah, so that was actually before the financial crisis. So
Mm,
and then it was failing, and then financial crisis was looming. So like
mm-hmm.
it's like a double shock. So when I started, actually the economy was booming. So
Oh.
2000 So there was I mean, it's a history lesson, but 2001, 2001, maybe 99 to 2001, there was a dot-com bubble. And
Mm-hmm.
then, so there was a huge boom, up to there. And then it crashed. And then, so between 2001 to, things were really bad, but
Mm-hmm.
then it came back. So between 2002 and 2006, 7,
Mm-hmm.
things were actually looking up everywhere in the world.
Mm-hmm.
The economy was booming everywhere in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And then people are extremely optimistic. Of course, there were no wars at the time. So like it's just a really good time. And then a lot of good like gigantic startups actually were founded around the time between 2000 and 2006, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Amazon, Google, like all those gigantic, Facebook 2003, 4 or something like that. So it's pretty exuberant, exciting times for entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I caught a bug around there too.
Mm-hmm.
When I started a company, I think things were actually pretty good everywhere. So I didn't necessarily worry about financial crisis and all that. But my startup didn't do well, and then financial crisis was looming. So like
Mm-hmm.
that was like 2000,
Double
the
puncher.
end of 7, beginning of 8 ish.
Mhm.
But yeah, 2006, 7, when I was doing that was not bad at all.
That's true. That's
So
true. I
yeah,
forget about that part, which is not good. Like you remember the bad things a lot, but
yeah,
that's true. That's true.
right.
Yeah. And you often hear like Paul Graham and like the PayPal Mafia talking about that era as well and how
Yeah,
great
yeah,
it
yeah,
was.
exactly. PayPal Mafia did so well around that time.
Mm,
I think PayPal itself, I think, yeah, was after the dot-com bubble, and then yeah, uh, just literally flew
that's
afterwards,
true.
took off. Yeah,
It must have been a time to be working in that era. It must
yeah.
have been really exciting.
Hmm. I mean, and Techstars and Ycon and those legendary accelerators also were founded around the time, 2005,
Mm,
6, right?
hmm
So I think it was a very exciting time. I think I read somewhere. I don't think you should quote me on this number, but 1990, sorry, 2005, so 20 years ago, the venture capital um, the sort of like the market, even in Silicon Valley, was $500 million or something, which is
hmm
really small,
Yeah.
$500 million, right?
Yeah.
Like now, if
Compared
you
to
take
now.
top tier US venture capitals, their
Yeah.
assets under management is $5 to $10 billion, right?
hmm
A16Z or NEA or you name it. So in total, it was only $500 million. Of course, granted there inflation and all that,
hmm
but the market has grown significantly in
hmm
the past 20, 25 years, right? Even
hmm
Silicon Valley. So on the flip side, Japan still has potential too, which I'm hoping that, will come.
Do you think that bug is also going around now in Japan as well, by the way?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm hoping that it won't be a boom, the temporal thing,
Mm,
because at the end of the day, I've been telling everyone that Japan has had a lot of amazing startups,
hmm
right? Like within the past 100 years.
hmm
Like the top companies around the world, the Japanese companies now were startups like
hmm
70 years ago, 80 years ago.
hmm
Like a Panasonic, Sony, even Toyota as
hmm
a car maker, right? And Nintendo, like those companies were startups, and also Recruit was a
hmm
startup, right? And then of course, different path and a third generation CEO, whatever. But Uniqlo is also sort of like a startup. The current,
hmm
CEO Yanai-san literally moved the small, like, one shop in Hiroshima to a global, like, like a behemoth in the
Yeah.
clothing industry. Over 30, 40 years. That's like a
Mhm.
literally the startup growth
That's
that
true.
people see in software world in the US, right? So like it's completely false that Japanese people can't innovate or Japanese people are not prone to be startup founders
Mm-hmm.
or entrepreneurs. Like, come on, like if you look at the top 10 Japanese companies, like
Mm-hmm.
most of them were startups 60, 70, 80 years ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or even recent. So I think this like a wave of what's happening right now
Mm-hmm.
should be the kind of foundation of the Japanese economy in the next 50 to 80 years. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm really hoping someone um, like today, I don't know, like 21-year-old, AI genius or, robotics, engineer or whoever it is going to make this company a
Mm-hmm.
global, like a behemoth someday. So that's my hope. And then startup ecosystem in Japan is just a catalyst or just an environment that would nurture those people and
Mm-hmm.
then companies.
Definitely, definitely. I fully agree with you on that. It does come from a very simple place of building that community to foster
Hmm.
that type of mentality and the type of conversations that we need. Like I'm reading the Steve Jobs biography right now and just
Hmm.
reading about the people he was surrounded with since he was like an infant. Like that's
Mm.
so different to like
Mm.
an average human in Tokyo right now,
Right.
growing up. And it would be so powerful if we talked more about these things and
Hmm.
for a kid to grow up in that environment. And
Right. Right. Of course.
definitely, for sure. I have a follow-up question to
Yeah.
what you talked about earlier in terms of that transition to becoming a lawyer. But
Hmm.
now that you've kind of seen an exponentially greater amount of startups, does it
Hmm.
change your perspective on the startup that you built way back like years ago? Like, do you think it was a really great idea and maybe some certain part that you didn't have at that moment didn't go well, or?
Yeah, I think there were a lot of tactical things I should have done better, and I
Mm,
would change the way that I would do if you know it were happening now. So
mm,
yeah, I completely would change how I tackle the
mm.
problem. Uh, but yeah, I think it's all 2020. Um, I think,
Definitely.
yeah, I think the idea, execution, everything is connected, of course,
Mm,
right? So some people think idea is cheap and, anyone can have a great idea, the execution is the key, which could be true. But, also the customers or revenue, need to just like happen very quickly
mm,
to survive. And then if it's a deep tech, like a long-term a bet, of course you do need outside capital, right?
mm,
So the game would be different. But the idea I was pursuing is sort of like a platform connecting the creatives and the big corporations. So
mm,
it's kind of open innovation ideas, but I just noticed there are a lot of independent creators and creative people, and then
mm,
large corporations want to capitalize on those like people on an ad hoc way instead of just
mm,
hiring them in-house and whatnot. So I just wanted to create a platform where people can be win-win and whatnot, but they
mm,
just the time horizon of the large corporations versus the big creators are completely different. So,
mm,
just didn't align, for example, and tech was really immature, primitive. Of course, I'm not an engineer, so I had to rely on two engineering, sort of co-founders at the time,
mm,
things like that. So there are a lot of tactical failures that I wish I knew how to fix. But at
mm,
the time, it was more like a patchwork of things and it just
mm.
didn't work out.
I feel like it
Yeah.
could have worked maybe like in the later like 2010s, like 2015 and later on
Yeah.
when like influencers became a bigger thing.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, exactly. So there's definitely a shift of power balance, right?
Mm,
But at the time, independent creators had no way of expressing themselves or adding value to like anything that is controlled or dominated
Mm,
by the large corporations, basically.
mm,
Um, but now, of course, the independent creators can have like a huge impact
mhm,
and then corporate brands even, use those influencers
mm,
to promote their brands, right? So
mhm.
the power balance has completely shifted. But at the time, I think it was not there. So yeah, the timing is obviously
Mm,
another thing that which I wouldn't have been able to control anyway. So
that's
that's
true.
a different issue. But
Definitely. It goes back to the whole like inflection point idea,
yeah,
right? So,
yeah.
nah. How would you explain that, by the way, inflection point to like an average human?
Inflection point. I
Yeah.
mean, it is a mathematical concept, and then there is inflection. So, to an average human being, in what way?
Like in terms of like startups, because I think
Right.
when a lot of like investors invest, they don't
Mm,
just look
mm,
at the quality of the startup, but they also look at like the times, right?
mhm,
So how would you define that inflection point? Like why, if
mm,
someone's like, why is that important? Like how would you
mm.
explain that?
Well, because the startup's growth cannot be, by definition,
Mm,
linear.
mm,
If it's a linear growth
mm,
or even flat, that is really not a startup.
mm,
It's a family-owned mom and pop ice cream shop, which
mm,
is totally fine, right?
mhm,
If you want to start a cafe with your, a significant other,
mm,
that's totally cool. And
mhm,
you don't want to scale up. You just want to make, I don't know, like 100 coffees a day and then make people happy. And then
mhm,
you just care about where you procure the beans and like, set up and all that, right? But every single year, it's either linear or flat, but you're fine,
mm,
right? So that's really not a startup. It's like a startup has to have exponential growth and inflection point where
mm,
like the impact will reach like a beyond the scale of 2 people or 10
mm,
people or 100 people. So
mhm,
that's the I think really the definition and epitome of a startup. So
mm,
I think that's how I explain the inflection point.
mm, mm. So I guess it's like something that accelerates that growth to become exponential as well, right?
Exactly. So from that point, it
Mm,
becomes a like an impact on the society or the people, like a beyond the reach of your friends and friends' friends, or
mm,
whatnot. Like people start using your tool or
mhm,
like start buying your a product
mhm,
without like literally references or like you selling. Like people are like,
mhm,
hey, this is a really cool product. Can I use this? And then I'm
mm,
more than happy to pay. And I think that's the like literally the inflection point, and that's where like startups become like real scale up.
mm, mm.
Yeah,
I have like a slightly spicy question for you that
yeah,
I just thought of.
yeah.
Some people have, not some people, I've heard it very often that in Japan,
Mhm,
that people or like the founder's vision is often not to the scale of exponentiality as like
mhm,
maybe Western or non-Japanese founders. Is that
mhm.
kind of what you've seen as well, or would you argue otherwise?
I yeah, I don't know the Japanese founders or foreign founders enough to make a general comment, to be
Yeah,
honest.
it's very
But on
generalizing, but yeah.
right, right. But on average, it is a fact that Japanese startups exits
Mm,
are very, very small,
mm,
regardless of acquisitions or TSE growth section or
yeah.
whatever former mothers. So I think it is possible that
Mm,
people in Japan, and especially Japanese founders, don't have the necessary like super high ambitions in
mm,
terms of revenue or reach or market value or whatever the
mm,
impact. So that's totally possible. So I would like to see a lot more like
mm,
the companies that have a huge impact on the world. I mean,
mm.
as I've been saying, that we did produce those companies, like
Yeah.
Toyota, Sony, Nintendo, like they are affecting millions of billions of people in a very good way. And then changing, they have changed the world for the better in, many ways.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I'm hoping that it will happen. And then
Mm,
those companies will come from current generation of young top talent from
mm-hmm.
Japan.
Definitely. The whole mothers and like the Tokyo Stock Exchange thing, there's always like arguments on whether it's actually the founder's intuition to go public that quickly or whether it's their shareholders pressuring them and giving them a small world to break into rather than aim for higher, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
I think it's a combination of a lot of things and it depends on person, but it is a fact.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree, I agree. The slight digression, but yeah, I think there is also like a systematic issue, which is about the fund's life from the venture capitals. I mean, it's not just Japan, but I think it is more prominent in Japan.
Mm,
They have their goals, they have their LPs,
mm,
right? The so the IRR and the fund life of 5 years, 7 years, and then return expectations like on all the kind of things. So.
mm,
Uh, they also have their own clients or goals and then definitely in some cases pressure the startups literally to exit
mm,
and then go public even the valuation that is generally considered negligent in the
mm.
US market. Like now, like
Yeah.
$200 million in the US market is considered peanuts.
Mm-hmm.
But it is a huge success in Japan, right? There are like IPOs that result only like 10 million, really
Yeah.
like 20 million, which is like shocking
Mm-hmm.
to a lot of US investors, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think on balance, I think your assessment is fair.
Mm-hmm. I was also a slight digression on my part, but out of
Mm,
curiosity as well. I was talking to a US investor a couple weeks ago, and they were saying
mhm,
how they're not looking for Japanese startups that are aiming for the world. They just want Japanese startups that can master the entire
mm,
Japanese market. And
mhm,
this was a very new opinion that I've never heard before because
mhm.
oftentimes domestically we aim for startups that are willing to go overseas and have
Yeah,
bilingual founders, right? Do you have some thoughts on this? Is this like a valid point, do you think? Or
yeah, I think it is actually.
mm,
So Japan is still a big market, right?
mm,
Overseas, US, China, different level, but
yeah.
I think Japan is still the fourth largest, or even in some metrics, third largest economy. So if you conquer the entire Japan,
Mm,
it's a significant market
mm,
still. A $5 trillion market, right? So
mm,
whatever the sector, of course, it depends, but it could become, of course, a unicorn and then decacorn
mm,
in many spaces,
mhm,
and especially like manufacturing or like in essential products or even services. So
mm,
if you have that kind of perspective and then you'd like to invest in a champion that conquers this country at $20 billion, I think
mm.
that's a totally legitimate investment strategy and thesis. And
Mm,
yeah, I think that's totally okay. I mean, I don't want to, I'm not sure if this make to the podcast, but
mm,
the because I don't want to single out one company, but for example, Daini got
mm,
an investment from Bessemer, which is a
mhm,
top tier USB-C, right?
mhm,
But as far as I know, Daini is purely Japan now, right?
Yeah.
On the obviously in the future they will move into other markets probably, and then that's probably in the deck, which I've never seen.
Mm,
But so far, their market is mostly, largely, predominantly, if not solely, Japan.
mm, mhm,
They're selling the systems to restaurants, really, in Japan.
mhm,
All the interface is Japanese and all that, right?
mhm,
And I know for a fact that the CEO founder, Yamada-san, speaks English, for example, right? But
mm,
the company is purely focused in Japan, and then Bessemer still invested. So I think their goal is probably for Daini to become the dominant player in the market in
Mm,
Japan
mm-hmm,
first, and then see how things go. But I think their assumption is even if you only conquer Japan, their
mm,
market value could be huge,
mm.
$1 billion. And then food is a huge a space in Japan, right? Like
Yeah.
especially the inbound tourism and all that. I think food market in Japan is just going to grow
Mm-hmm.
100%. So it is I think it is a good market,
Mm,
a lot of food providers from Japan are actually moving abroad, but
mm,
still based in Japan, right? Like a ramen restaurants or the kaiseki restaurants and whatnot.
mm,
They're trying to open the second or third stores in, I don't know, New York or Singapore or whatever.
mm,
But
mm,
they still have the huge market in Japan. So I think if that's the way you see the investment goes and
mm.
then makes return, I think that's a totally legitimate way.
Mm, mm, definitely. Yeah.
Mm,
I initially thought, I was like, wow, this is a very different opinion
mm,
to what I often hear. But yeah, it totally makes sense as well, especially
mhm.
in the food space. And when they're also encouraging inbound tourism as well. Like,
Yeah,
and Japan has so many retailers as well. So
yeah,
it just makes sense as well. But
yeah.
yeah. So thank you for sharing that.
No worries.
So for my next question, I want to ask a bit more about like your angel investing kind of
Hmm.
experience. So for those who don't know, Yuki is also the founder of Yakumi, a Tokyo-based angel investment syndicate platform. And through Yakumi and also individually, Yuki has invested in more than 50 startups. So kind of like talking about your past investments as well. What has been your investment thesis when it comes to angel investing, and does it differ to how you judge startups through Techstars?
Yeah, thank you. A good question again. The my angel investment was obviously always early stage. So
Mm,
it's very similar to what I've been selecting through Techstars.
mm,
The founders and team, that's what it matters, really. Um, I think I already mentioned, so I'm not going to repeat too much, but the dynamism and then vision and flexibility and persistent, like all those adaptability. So those are all qualities I like to see in founders.
mm,
And then their vision, goals. So those are I think the key criteria. And then I didn't have any like industry,
mm,
um, or, vertical, focus. So
mm,
as long as founders are focused on the problems they want to solve, and they're a good team, or if solo founder has great qualities to
mm,
become a successful entrepreneur, I'm in. So I think that's the sort of like a thesis, and it hasn't changed much since. And yeah, being the managing director of Techstars hasn't changed that either. So I see the similar things. And then I think at Textures, I think we have similar philosophies as well. But
mm,
one thing I think Textures or the more institutional investors care about is the traction of customers.
mm,
Like, are there actually customers? Are there people who would pay for your product, for your service,
mm,
for your solution, really? So I think that part I hadn't thought and didn't think too much when I was angel investing through your community or whatnot.
mm,
But now I care more about customers and revenue. Like,
mm,
how do you plan to, make $1 million in a year or 2 years, right? That's kind of question I would ask the founders, or I would think to myself when I'm assessing the startups, in
mm.
addition to the founders team.
I see, I see. Oftentimes, when you hear about like investors or just founders as well, they have like a vision of an ideal future in mind, and
Hmm.
they invest or take part in a startup or initiative because they see it as something that would
Hmm.
contribute to that future, right? Do you
Hmm.
think that's kind of the approach that you take as well for Techstars and the startups?
Not necessarily, but I
Mhm.
see I see a point of it. So it's a bit of a reverse engineering. Like, you start with like, where you want to be and then what
Mm,
you want to achieve, and then like you kind of write a roadmap to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think I see the benefit a bit,
Mm-hmm.
but for me personally, I'm not too strict on that.
Mm-hmm. And where do you think you look into? Is it like Yapari, the founders and the team and their
Mm,
dynamic,
mhm.
and also the users, are they willing to pay? Is it like more those elements, like the present day, see visual things that you can see type things that you feel like you're
Yeah,
big investing?
right. So to be honest, like a storytelling is extremely important and then communication is key.
Mm,
But I've seen enough to say that the people who are extremely good at storytelling doesn't necessarily do a good job as a founder. And on
interesting.
the other hand, people who don't tell a good story doesn't mean that person or founders don't know anything about what they're doing or don't know how to solve the problem. They just can't communicate well,
Mm,
right? So that's like a wasted talent. So
mm,
I encourage Japanese founders, particularly to
mm,
tell a good story, to tell a vision, to tell a narrative,
mm,
because people don't know you. People don't know the problem that you're tackling. People
mm,
don't know how you do it. People don't
mm,
know the space. People don't know anything,
mm,
including the VCs or the future colleagues, future talent that you want to recruit, or anyone around you, even your significant other, probably don't know anything about it. So
mm,
you need to tell a coherent and exciting and just a story that sticks. People
mm,
just forget what you say, like,
mm,
in 3 minutes. And then people don't know, people don't pay attention. So I think the storytelling is extremely important skill. But
mm,
that said, just telling like, a vision really well doesn't
mm.
make anyone a good founder or a good
That's true.
entrepreneur, right? So I kind of discount a little bit of the storytelling of the founders.
Mm,
Of course, I get really excited, and then I enjoy listening to those visionaries, amazing storytellings,
mm,
skills. But at the same time, like it has to be like substantiated by the skills or the experience or the things they are doing or
mm,
talking to or people they're talking to, like all those kind of things. So
mm,
I think the founders traits don't necessarily so the founder traits are very important, but the storytelling is not necessarily the most important or even like
mm,
essential trait.
mm,
And when I see a successful founder
mm.
in
If you had to choose between a founder that gives a really good story but has no substance versus a founder with really good substance but a really crappy story, which one would you pick?
well, so the different problems, right? The
Yeah.
first one, and actually to a certain extent, the second one, you just need to know.
Mm,
And then most of the time, especially I'm not a technical person, I just don't know,
mm,
right? So if the guy is building a humanoid robot, for example,
mm,
or the computation architect don't know how good he is or what he's trying to do or whom he's talking to or what kind of people he assembled and things like that,
mm,
right? So I just don't know.
mm,
So either you need to do a lot of research,
mm,
knowing the false claims, the people who are really good at storytelling and making,
uh-huh.
or you need to know the crappy storyteller is actually building something that could be revolutionary.
Mm,
So
mm,
it is, I think it is on me or on the investors. And it is tough because there are so many spaces. Now, 90% of people are focused on AI,
yeah.
but there are so many spaces that could become, huge,
Mm-hmm.
like space tech and agri-tech, obviously robotics, but entertainment, like, gaming
Mm-hmm.
is a huge space and like, all those interesting, exciting spaces, so you just can't be an expert at everything, right? So
Mm,
you need to rely on domain experts to assess, but even domain experts now it's so specialized and it's so difficult to find like the right person who can actually make a comment
that's
substantively
true.
on the technology or the companies they're building,
Mm,
that kind of reverts back to like, okay, who are the founders? Are
mm,
they actually, trustworthy and then have track record or like, good team or like, those kind of things that we discussed.
I see. And when
Yeah.
it comes to like Techstars, I'm not sure if you can disclose. I think you can,
Yeah.
but when you're investing or when you're like not investing, but like picking startups, like
Yeah.
in terms of like ratio of co-founder, founder, team dynamic versus idea, like because it's so early as well, like what's kind of the ratio? Is it like 90-10 or is it like 50-50 or
I guess it depends. So I can only speak from the experience of 2024.
Mm,
So the stages vary from not like just pure idea, but like,
mm,
idea to POC to, whatever stage to actually already generating revenue of
mm,
actually $2 million level. So
mm,
it's very a different and a diverse group
mm,
of people are accepted. And I accepted them on the merits basically.
mm,
And then it was industry agnostic. So there are a lot of different people in different industries and like,
mm,
whatnot. So it's hard to generalize, but like to be honest, I think the repeat founder is a huge asset.
mm,
Even if that person was failing the first one or the
mm,
second one, even because once you go through the process, you learn a lot, right?
mm,
Even if you fail, you learn a lot to make
mm,
it a more successful a startup next time.
mm,
So I think a repeat founder is a great indicator of
mm,
success, in my opinion.
mm,
But of course, I accepted non-repeat founders
mm,
to the first year program, and also I continue to do so. And I think there are two repeat founders, but it just really depends on the space and whatnot. So
mm. Very, very interesting. I have like a billion questions around this space, but um,
no problem.
I have a question that kind of goes back to your experience as a corporate lawyer back in New
Mhm.
York. But with your past life as a corporate lawyer, you've worked with clients from all over the world, and you also worked on a number of Japanese M&As, including Base's acquisition of Quartz, which is very,
Right.
very cool.
Mhm.
And my question here is, given your expertise in witnessing a range of executives and companies, how would you characterize the Japanese corporate's way of strategy and investment?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think I don't want to be too critical of Japanese large
Mm,
corporations,
mm,
but as compared to American or even Chinese or other Asian, Korean, Singapore, companies, I think their decision making is a little too complex and
mm,
a little too slow,
mm,
uh, especially when speed is really important
mm,
for startups, innovation
mhm,
from within the large corporation too, right? So
mhm,
um, you just need to make a decision and then fail and then
mhm,
move on, and learn lesson and then use that lesson to do better next time. Like,
mhm,
Japanese companies, especially large ones, have a lot of cash and a lot of like like they have the luxury to fail, but
mm,
they just don't try.
mm,
Um, to me, generally speaking.
mm,
So I
mm,
think the way they strategize or operate or finance or
mm,
whatnot, they should be more bold. I think they can take more risks. They
mm,
um, of course, every publicly listed company is under pressure from the shareholders to do
mm,
better and then to increase profitability and like but I think that's really like lacking in my opinion,
mm,
and then that is a bit disappointing from startups, builders' perspective,
Mm,
whether a founder or an investor or mentor, supporter like me.
mm,
So I wish and then I hope they will move more quickly and then take the innovation a lot more seriously.
mm,
Uh, so I think that's all I can say. But of course, a lot of Japanese companies have amazing IP, the
mm,
intellectual property, for example,
mhm,
and they should take advantage of that. They develop technologies internally so much, and
mm,
they also file patents and all that, but they just don't use it, or they don't think it's worth, or so they even don't license. So they just
mm,
sell it off or whatnot. So there are companies that are buying up the IPs from the large corporations and license them out.
mm,
So there is a market for it.
mm.
It's a separate topic, but
So
what
they
I'm
don't
saying is like
license it? They don't license it out
they don't
themselves.
they don't just don't license.
They just sell
Well, I
it.
mean, again, it's a little bit of generalization, but they just
Mm,
don't know how to commercialize or how to license and
mm,
how to use it for other purposes. So they
mm,
just develop internally and they accumulate so much knowledge and literally IP
mhm,
in the form of patents or otherwise, and then they just
mhm.
don't utilize it.
Yeah.
And then some companies just buy them up, for example, and then license to companies outside Japan or even within Japan for purposes that were not considered by the original inventors.
Yeah.
So I think it is kind of a waste. I mean, Japanese companies have been a top, like, 10 or 20 players in the patent filing for the past 30 years, right? Now, I
Mm,
think China, Korea, those companies are taking over. And then, of course, the US has been a steady country where
mm,
maybe three or four companies in the top 10, like IBM and whatnot. But Japanese companies were traditionally extremely IP focused and
mm,
R&D focused, right? The
mm.
Canon, Panasonic, and Toyota,
That's
Hitachi,
true.
like all those companies. So I'm just talking about manufacturing companies,
Mm,
mostly in this particular respect. But I think they
mm,
can utilize the IPs that they have more. And then in the contents and entertainment world, finally, those people are trying to take advantage of it. But for the longest time, uh, the amazing players like I don't know Kadokawa or Shochiku or even TV companies,
mm,
they just didn't know how to monetize.
mm,
I don't know, Demon Slayer, Attack on Titan, like all those amazing contents.
mm,
Finally, they are getting exposure through Netflix or like
mm.
some like
Uniqlo
licensing like
t-shirts
right.
and
It is mind-boggling to me, right? Like Hello
mm,
Kitty is probably the most commercialized character
mm-hmm,
in the world other than Mickey Mouse. But
mm-hmm,
still, like I don't know if Sanrio's market value today, but like I
mm-hmm,
don't think they are capitalizing on the amazing brand value of Hello Kitty,
mm.
for
That's
example, right?
true.
But if you go to anywhere, Middle East, Africa, America, Southeast Asia, anywhere, Hello Kitty is so loved by, children, little girls, and like even like adults and like
Mm-hmm.
or whatnot, right? So like why is not $100 billion company, for example,
That's
right?
true. That's true.
And there's just so many amazing so like the IP comes in different forms, but the
Mm,
contents or the characters or bound value, like
mm.
even like sushi and ramen, those kind of things are IP, like it's a brand.
That's
Like
true.
why we're not doing so well,
Do you have
you
theories?
know,
Like
sorry,
why? Other
sorry.
than just like lack of knowledge of how to commercialize, do you have theories on why this is?
Do you have theories for why?
I
I have some theories, but it will take a couple hours, so I wouldn't
it kind of
get to
reminds
that
me of
now.
like it kind of reminds me of the healthcare industry and like research labs
Yeah,
at like Todai where commercializing is kind of frowned upon when it's the
yeah,
first motive for doing anything. It's like
yeah,
shobai. Like
yeah.
is kind of like frowned upon. I don't know if that's the case for
I don't think that's true at all because
yeah,
the Panasonic and Sony and Nintendo, like I've been
right?
saying,
Hmm.
and then also I just looked it up, so I think you need to like put together the segment. But the Sanrio's market value is $8 billion, $8.7 billion.
Okay.
That's tiny. There
Hmm.
are literally 200 startups in
Hmm.
the US only, or even China,
Yeah,
that are beyond that market value. I
that's
can tell it,
true.
right? And then Sanrio has Hello Kitty, like 100% owner.
Uh-huh.
And then their most beloved character, at least top five in the world,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? And then market value is $8 billion. That's just
Damn.
mind-boggling,
Yeah, that blows my mind.
right? And yeah, exactly. So literally not doing well in capitalizing the yeah,
Wow.
and then Walt Disney's market value is $200 billion, right? So obviously it's a completely different, business model, and they have like a movies and music and
Hmm.
all that stuff. But it's just ridiculous でしょ。おかしい。絶対おかしい。
Yeah,
Right? It
that's
just doesn't
true.
make sense, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I'm saying. But yeah, anyways, yeah.
This is something that I've never thought about in depth before, but it's very interesting for sure.
Mhm.
It's like one final question. What do you think 2025 will be for Japan in the world of startups and VC?
Ooh, that's a tough question. Always the prediction is not, you know, uh, tough. But I am hopeful, bullish, optimistic, whatever you say. Japan is finally waking up to the fact that, like, oh, we need to do something,
Mm,
uh, because otherwise we're going to be hugely behind
mm,
in everything we do.
mm-hmm,
Um, Japan has been complacent for a long time,
mm-hmm,
20, 30 years, lost decades, 2 decades, 30, 3 decades, whatever. And large companies are still doing okay and getting a lot of cash from abroad. But that's obviously not enough.
mm,
Of course, the US and China and then other countries, I don't touch upon because it's not part of the question. But Japan itself is not sustainable.
mm,
The debt, aging society, like a decreasing population, like everything just point towards the destruction of this country
mm-hmm,
in the long term.
mm-hmm,
And then very few things can save that and
mm,
change the course, and one of which is innovation,
mm,
like revolutionary, like change,
mm,
and whatever field or space that so like I mentioned, in the past 70, 80 years, Japan has produced amazing startups that
mm-hmm,
became global phenomenon, and Japan can do it again. And then it's not just the culture is not an entrepreneurial, or the making money is not in their genes. That's I think a false argument in my opinion.
mm,
It's just the risk taking, and really, like, you have to take a leap of faith,
mm,
right? One of the reasons that a lot of those names I mentioned came uh, to fame is because they had no other choice. They had
mm,
to take risks.
mm-hmm,
Like Sony and Panasonic, for example, after World War II, Japan was nothing.
mm-hmm,
We were burnt down, literally, obviously, no pension, no savings, nothing.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Like you have nothing to protect. You
mm-hmm,
just got to build, and then you have to do what you're good at and then what you love,
mm-hmm,
and then you see the problem, and then you just want to solve. So that's how things, like came about.
mm-hmm,
So literally, I think Japan is on the verge of a breakdown,
mm,
really. And I think Japanese young talent especially
mm,
are noticing it, and then I hope they will become, a next Sony, Panasonic,
mm,
Nintendo, those type of people, and
mm.
then revitalize economy.
Mm, definitely. And the more optimistic flip to all of this is my last question for Yuki today,
Mhm.
which is what can the audience do for you?
Oh, great. There were a few things, but one, I'm still the managing director of Techstars Tokyo 2025, and applications are open, and it's closing on May 14th. So please do apply and then be part of the change of the Japanese society and whatnot. So that would be one way to help me.
Hmm.
And then the second way is just to support startups, whatever way that you can. Like as a founder, of course, that would be the best way. But if you want to be a mentor, if you want to be an investor, or if you're going to join a startup, regardless of how you do, every help counts. And then I think it would make the startup ecosystem like more vibrant and diverse and exciting for everyone. Whatever you think you can and would like to do, please join our sort of movement and
Hmm.
then become a catalyst.
Definitely. I will link Yuki's socials down below so you can check him out on LinkedIn and everywhere else as well. That's all the questions that I have for you today. Thank you, Yuki, so
Great.
much for spending your Saturday evening chatting with me. I
No, thank you
appreciate
so
your time.
much for inviting. And
Of course. Thank you.
sure,
Bye.
bye.